As we enter the month of October, we're going to have a discussion about Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. Coming at you.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Joel, welcome back. It's another week, another episode, and we're back at this. Today, just you and I in the studio.
Yeah, which is nice. Sometimes just for the two of us to have the conversation. Well, here's the deal. Yet again, another excuse for you and I to talk it up here in the studio after not seeing each other for a while.
It's been a while. I've been out for 2 weeks on vacation, and it's been a while since we've done an episode just the two of us, no
just
guests.
The two of us. We can make it if we try.
Copyright.
Will Smith. Yeah, we're going to get flagged now.
Yeah.
On that now. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Shoot, we've gone all this time without breaking any rules.
Trademark infringement. Oh, well.
Free speech, and we end up breaking rules.
Let's just be clear, though. My singing is so terrible, it won't recognize that as actual music.
No, I don't believe so either. They're just going to be like, no, that's not.
Oh, my goodness. Andy, we are in the month of October.
We are.
If my calendar serves me correctly.
I believe it's been like a quick year.
It has. We just got a few months left. I mean, we're all holding the breath as the presidential election approaches, much like you do as a tsunami hits land. But when I think of October now, obviously we think of these fine fall months, but also
we think of pumpkin spice.
Oh, the pumpkin spice. We think of women wearing tall leather boots and puffy vests.
Right.
And what else? Andy, do you drink the fall coffees? Do you get into that stuff at all?
If it's Colombian and dark and nothing in it, sure.
Okay.
Nothing else.
That. You're not doing like the fall blend.
No.
Of where it's got a little jazz in the coffee.
No.
Okay. You know what? I appreciate your being a steadfast
coffee drinker.
Coffee drinker. Yeah, that's
But
good.
you know what? The great thing about this though is it's starting to get cooler, and so we can actually start drinking coffee back in our studio again.
It feels right, doesn't it?
It does, because like when it's summer and it's blazing out, you don't want it.
But now, our Just Brewing segments. Well, I could say this is really the Just Brewing. This is the Just Brewing segment, as Andy looks to hit the proper button for that.
Hey man, what's brewing?
So glad you asked, Josiah. Thank you. So here's what's brewing with me, Andy. I'm as folks listen to this episode, I will have just completed a trip out to the Southwest.
So how was it?
Yeah. It was fantastic, Andy. You won't believe the things.
Go ahead and
you won't believe the things that I did out there.
You're gonna say it's great.
Yeah. Just in general, we here at Clinton Frame Church are piloting a gap year program for young adults, folks that have just graduated high school that say, "Hey, I'm not going to jump into college right away. I want to do some experiences, do some living." So I've got a young adult, Shane, who is down in Peoria, Arizona, just outside of fine Phoenix, working with a ministry down there. It's a camp, but it's primarily looking to serve the Native American population down there. And I'm going to go visit him, but I'm also doing a little recon work because we're looking to do a few work groups, some young adult work groups here in the coming year. Send down there. And we're looking to send them down before it gets blazing hot. So it'd be like a spring break kind of thing. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. Missionaries that we support are down there. John and Lindsay Berkey were, and John, if you're listening, and I know you are, looking forward to spending some time. I am going to do a day trip to Sedona. I'm going to do a little hiking. It's sort of a spiritual.
Sure.
It's a spiritual pilgrimage for me, Andy, and you'll sort of understand this. I, going on 15 years ago, had a real rough wake up call in my ministry life. Some things transpired, and I was questioning whether or not I was actually could be a pastor
Right.
or if I even. I
Yeah.
was questioning just so many things. I was not in a great place. A lot of things had gone down. Really struggling in life, and I went to go visit my grandparents in Phoenix and did a trip to Sedona and went into, was it Cathedral of the Rocks? There's a Frank Lloyd Wright
right.
church
Sure. Yeah.
there at Sedona, Catholic church. It's built into the rock, well known. And I remember sitting in that church and thinking to myself, this might be the last time that I ever sit in a church.
Interesting. I don't think I knew that about you.
Yeah, this is it. And so here's the deal. 15 years later, I'm going back there, in a far better place, and a lot of God has done a lot of work on me. But I think it's just going to be cool to sit back down there 15 years later and to kind of like have that
Absolutely
that experience, do that reflection. So anyway, that's what I'm up to. Phoenix, Arizona, coming at you. It'll be a balmy mid-90s when I hit there, but I'm told it's a dry heat, so
it's all right.
It's fine. It's fine. Shane called me the other day. He's down there. He's used to obviously the Midwest humidity and all the weather. He goes, no, the dry heat thing. He's like, I'm kind of getting it. I mean, he's like, I do get blasted in the face each morning when I get up and
it's like opening that oven.
Open my door, front door, and get hit with it. But yeah, so looking forward to that. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to go down there and hopefully set some things up for some future mission trip and service trip stuff. So, Andy, how are things with you, man?
Well, we just got back from vacation, so I'm doing pretty good.
The Smokies
and Florida.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Way to jam both those things right in.
Yeah, and it was jammed together, and it
jammed together.
Yeah. It was good though. I mean, we got to do a lot of cool things and hang out with the family.
Andy is secretly my vacationing. He's like my vacationing hero, like my mentor, vacationing mentor.
Listen, I'm giving all the credit here to Julie though, because she's the one that has planned these.
She
trips
orchestrated
out.
it out.
So
I just obviously vacationing with as many kids as we have is
tough.
It's tough, right? And just has some logistical challenges. And so the fact that you went to two locations,
amazing.
Golly, Julie, I don't know what we just don't know how you do what you do, but you've got a special gift. Yes. Applause to you. Well, hey, we are back indeed, and as I said earlier, we are we're in the fall months. We're in the month of October. October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. It is a subject that is near and dear to our hearts here on the Dudes and Dads podcast, and we know that some of our listeners definitely connect with the whole issue of pregnancy and infant loss. You've walked that road as well, and so. It's times like these that we just we want to continue to bring awareness to it. We want to continue to let people know that if they've experienced it, they're not alone.
Right, and I mean we'll chat about this later, but that's like especially if you're a guy or a dude.
Yes,
like it seems to be in the community where it's kind of don't talk about it.
Yeah.
But we have talked about this before. Season 1, I believe it was episode 2 or 3. I'll link it in the show notes.
It was early
at dudesanddadspodcast.com. But yeah, one of the very first episodes we did, we talked about this also because this is something that that I have experienced firsthand, and Joel, you've experienced from the support. Because we are friends. We've been friends for a while. We were friends when this happened. So you were out there supporting us at the time that this happened.
Yeah, it was learning, as we have said, a learning experience for all of us. Obviously, it's one for the people that are directly connected to it, but then also as we talk about how to care for, love, and support as friends the people that are going through loss like this. There's definitely, a lot of things to learn along the way. So, Andy, I think it's helpful maybe for our listeners who have not heard the story, for you just to tell us your guys' story.
Sure.
And then we can kind of unpack a few things.
Sure. So back in 2012, on April 10th, my wife Julie was 38 weeks pregnant. There we go. With our fourth child. She had a minor stomach bug. She noticed a little bit of slowing movements. But she was close to the end of the pregnancy, so we didn't think a whole lot about it. We had just been to the midwife 3 days before that, and we heard a very strong 136 beats per minute heartbeat. We were at this time we were trying to move into a new house. We were super busy, so that's part of the reason we didn't think about the fact that it had been slowing down. Like, we were pretty busy ourselves. We were, cleaning up the house, getting the new house ready to go. And so we really didn't think a whole lot about that, though. So on the 10th of April, 2012, there was still not a whole lot of movement. So Julie laid down and did a kick count, and she only had 3 movements in the time that she did the kick count. And so our midwife at the time sent us for a non-stress test. So we arrived, and the nurse came in, took up Julie, to the fetal monitor, and she searched and searched and searched and couldn't find a heartbeat. So she went out to call her other midwife. She came back in to call the midwife. In the meantime, she flagged down a doctor who was a part of the same practice as the midwife, and he came in to do an ultrasound machine, with an ultrasound machine. And again, he searched and searched and searched and couldn't find it. And like the whole time, I kind of had this like sinking feeling in my gut, like. Even from the very first nurse that came in, I was like, this is not good. She can't find a heartbeat. Like, I've been, this is our 4th pregnancy. I've seen it every time, every time we've gone in, they can easily find a heartbeat, no problem. This time she couldn't find a heartbeat. And so like, I knew it right away. But I won't ever forget the words of that doctor when he said, "You're not going to like what I have to say. Your baby has no heartbeat." And, sorry.
Yeah.
Still, this long gets me. So we called our parents, and we had to try and figure out what we were going to tell our other 3 children, because they were staying with them at the time. Because we said, hey, we got to go to the go in. And we honestly, when we went in, we weren't thinking anything at all. Like, we went in. In fact, we honestly stopped and got a cheeseburger on the way, because we were like, hey, this is no big deal. And so our kids were with theirs. We had to kind of figure out what we were going to say that to our children. And that I think as a dad was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, is to explain to my kids that like their sister is no longer living. So then on April 12th, 2014, at 10:02 p.m., Mason was stillborn. So that's kind of my story. You were with us shortly after that, like you guys and our friends Brian, the Chris's and the Millers were in the hospital that night. You guys were actually on a trip and came back.
Yeah, and I'm in thinking about it's weird because like we were all out to dinner. We were up in Grand Rapids, and we were all out to dinner together. And and Andy, you'll understand this when I say it. Like the things that stick out in your mind about that experience, or the things that you remember, or it's like I can remember what I was eating for dinner that night when we got everything around me. I'm like, I have that moment, like
it's like you took a photograph,
right? Like frozen in my mind, and the fact that I was eating chicken and waffles. Like, why do I remember that? It's I do, right? And I think from on the friend side, as we heard the news, it's the one similar feeling that probably overlaps is this feeling of powerlessness. Like, this is a done. What can we do? Right? Like when you have to come to terms with there's only a few responses actually available to you, and the situation cannot be controlled here at all. This is out of our hands in any way, shape, or form, or the way it very much feels. that is when that was a season for us where we learned a whole lot about the ministry of presence. And yeah, the importance of, I mean, and I was, still a relatively young pastor at the time. I mean, since then I've done a lot of,
You've grown up.
I've sat in the hospital a whole lot more, and
Right.
I'm grateful for the and you'll understand as I'm
Sure,
saying this.
yeah.
I'm grateful for the experience. I don't know, it sounds strange. I am grateful that I personally had that kind of experience with you guys because I was able to learn more. I had a situation just last year, earlier this year, last year, where was with a family who had was caring for a child. It was foster care, but like a newborn situation, and because of neglect and abuse prior, child passed away, and so I was, in the ER with the family when the baby died, and it was like I was a lot better pastor in that moment than I think than I would have been if I had not experienced and be able to learn and ask a lot. I mean, because that's the thing that's been helpful. I think is just being able to ask all the questions, right? All the questions that you have, because there's a lot of stuff that comes up after this,
right?
That is like just feels like this isn't. It's the funeral is not normal. The quote unquote normal. I mean, so many things feel like they're out of the box a little bit,
right? Well, and I just realized too, I may have said the wrong year at the beginning. It's 2014. I don't remember what I said. 2014. I don't remember if that's what I said or not.
You said 2000. Which I had it written down. You said 2012 initially. But yes,
sorry, I was wrong. 2014.
Yes, because we're going on 7 years.
Yeah. So I wanted to correct that, not make you think that she was pregnant in 2012 and then 2014 is when she had the baby. But,
yes.
Yeah. So I do think that, like, one of the things that sticks out in my mind, and you mentioned the ministry of presence, like the whole idea of just sitting Shiva and sitting there and not talking, just being with that. And I think that you guys did a really great job at that during that time, because there's not much that you can do. I mean, anything that you say, like, and this is one thing that I've learned since then. I mean, because of that whole pregnancy and infant loss, is that, like, there's a lot of well-meaning things that people say,
right?
But that don't, just as a dad, when you're just had your child die,
right?
You're well-meaning, but those don't come through well-meaning.
Yeah,
like things like, I guess God just needed another angel, or she's in a better place,
right?
As a grieving dad, no, the better place is right here.
Right.
Is right here. So, like, you guys did a really, really great job of just sitting there, being present with us, knowing when we needed our space, knowing when we needed somebody around just to be there.
Yeah, and the fine line that you walk is that someone who's going through a grief process, like there's actually just at the neurological, physiological, your ability to make decisions is becomes much more limited.
Right.
So other people have to make some decisions for you. So we weren't, and that's what I think, man. That's what I think our group of friends did particularly well. Will always be just amazed and grateful to everybody that was just like, okay, so we need, here are the things that, as far as like the pre and post funeral things that we can do. Here are the meals that we can have for families. Here are the, those sort of things, because you weren't going to know to ask about those things or be able to voice that what you needed, because in that moment you're not even thinking about yourself actually at all.
One of the things that stands out to me, like shortly, like, well, we were still in the hospital, like pretty much after we found out that she had passed away, like my initial thought was, do we have a funeral?
Right.
Do we have a gravesite? Like, is she buried somewhere? Like, what? Like, I didn't know that. Like, I mean, it makes sense now to me. Like, yes, we're gonna have a funeral and a gravesite for her. because she has a body and she's she was old enough to have a body.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like
a fully
formed,
developed,
right.
fully
And
developed
so
body.
like those are things you just don't know. Like I had never thought about that.
Yep.
Like the fact that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss, like that's not something that as however old I was then.
Yeah.
I'm too old to do math now. That's not something that you think about. Like the fact that this pregnancy may not last to completion.
Right. And especially in the culture that we live, we assume. I mean, yeah, you assume that every pregnancy just goes on like clockwork.
Right. And then
Yeah,
until you know that, and then like I remember specifically, like we since then we have had one more child, and it like that whole pregnancy for the 5th child, the whole time you were saying to yourself like, okay, are they gonna find a heartbeat? Is this
Right.
gonna be okay? Like
Right.
that's running through your brain
Yeah.
the whole time. Like you're nervous every time. And like I remember like so our 5th child had a cleft palate and cleft lip. And like I remember I had left I had gone with Julie to almost all of her doctor's appointments or her midwife appointments. And they had done the ultrasound or the ultrasound. And like I had left early and went back to work, and like they said, "Hey, is your husband, still here?" And Julie like panicked because like her immediate like is going, like,
geez,
what's
like,
going on?
We have something to tell you.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then and I remember even like that first, like when we found out that she had a cleft lip and palate, like it was almost, I don't want to say sad, but it was just like, oh my goodness. But then the reality of, but she's alive,
Right.
like hit
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I just know that, I mean, yeah, after the loss of Macy, I think I just don't take, there's the things in the pregnancy process, like I just didn't take for granted anymore, because we had a keep my dates straight. If that was in 2014, then yeah. So when, for instance, like when we found out we were pregnant with Molly,
Mhm.
it's like my first thought, which would not have been my thought prior, was, is this going to go okay?
Right. And Molly is slightly
She's
younger.
4, yeah, a little over 4.
Yeah, she's younger than our young.
Yeah, 6 months,
younger.
6 months
So,
younger.
yeah, so it would have been after we experienced that cleft lip and palate and the pregnancy loss is when you guys were pregnant with Molly.
And you're like, oh yeah. I mean, because guys, like, a child is a doggone miracle. Like all the things, I know I'm saying this, it's like, well, duh, but like just all the things you realize, like you take for granted, like all the things that have to come together and work together for a child to come into being and to grow healthy and all that. It's just like amazing.
Well, and not to like complicate things, but like we had no real good answers on what happened to Macy. Like we know she wasn't getting enough oxygen, but there was like the symptoms, the things that caused that specific thing in pregnancy, like didn't fit Julie. Like there was like 3 or 4 things, like conditions or whatever,
sure.
but like Julie didn't have any of those conditions, and it just happened. And so for us for the next child, it's like there's nothing we could do to say, hey, Julie, don't XYZ because this might happen. Like we didn't know what was what caused that for real.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a stressful last pregnancy. Now, one thing that I think that gets kind of overlooked, I'd say, is the guys a lot of times in infant and pregnancy loss. And,
Sure.
And I don't think that's done on purpose. Definitely not. But like if you look out there, well, for one, there was, and I'm not necessarily blaming the hospital that we were at, but like they handed us a folder of like support things for people who have had infant loss, and like half of the things in there were either not meeting for the last 6 years, but they still had the things in there. Like there's just not a lot of awareness for pregnancy. That's one of the things that I have found out since then. Like
Yeah.
it's not something that hospitals really know how to deal with and have support for. So, and there are support groups out there for families, and there are some for women. My wife is involved in a really good one. But for us dudes, like there's not a whole lot. And I think part of that is because we don't express our feelings very well.
Right.
Because as guys, like we're expected to be the pillars for our family. We're expected to emotionally hold things together. And I think that, and we don't like talking about our emotions. Let's be honest. Like I'm an emotional dude. You heard me cry, and I cry a lot.
All the time.
All the time.
It really gets embarrassing.
After we end every episode, I cry. No, not really. But
right.
I'm an emotional guy, and I still
Sure.
find it hard to talk about my emotions when it comes to things like this.
Sure.
Now, I can talk to you guys because you guys were here in the midst of it.
Right.
But there's been a few other guys that I've tried to chat with, and it's just hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, like, how are you doing, man? Like, it's okay to cry.
Right. Just permission giving to have thoughts and feelings about it. And I think for a guy in particular, because of the fact that there can be some misgivings or misunderstandings because of the fact that you were not the child was not physically inside of you.
Right.
Right. And the connection is different because a dad is connected to the kid upon the birth of the child in a way like, oh, it's
right.
It's now here in front of me and see it. Okay.
Whereas the mother has had that whole experience of carrying it.
Yeah, all that.
Right.
And that's that is part of the challenge. But Andy, I do wonder, and we've talked about this before, but your approach toward grief now, when thinking about how grief works, how you walk through grief, how you respond to grief, what your relationship is with grief, what would you say about it now?
I would say that there's not like the 7 steps of grief or whatever. It's not an easy like do this and then this and then this and then this. It's like a jumbled line. Like you may have this stage of grief, but then you may run down here and then you may be back up here again. And then like it's just back and forth on this grief thing. And like it's been, a while. I mean, 2014 has been a long time since 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I got teary-eyed when I was talking about what happened.
You still have feelings.
No, definitely it's not.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same as it used to be. I mean, It used to be where I'd find myself in the car alone and I'd break down, or I'd be listening to a song and I'd break down, or I'd be in the bathroom at work and I'd break down. Like, I mean, it literally was a lot. And that has definitely lessened as time has gone on. And I think my relationship with it is it's definitely healthy. I think that one of the most important things that I did in my grief was walk through it with my wife. There's the statistic is I don't have it offhand, but it's ridiculous the amount of people who have gone through pregnancy and infant loss and then end up getting a divorce.
Yeah,
because it's hard, and you guys, because you're both experiencing a loss and you are coming at it in a different light. I mean, like women are different than dudes.
Yeah. I mean, I would just anticipate, I guess, like, and again, I 100% agree with that statistic, I think it might be as high as 70%, Andy.
It's really high.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
I think it seems a little counterintuitive though, because I would think like, oh, you've both gone through this hard thing together, and you working through it together is gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like that's gonna bring you closer together
if you let it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, and you're, I mean, the hard thing for me, and this is where it was really hard for me is I'm expected. I mean, I'm not not. I don't want to say expected. Like there was no like external
Gotcha.
presence that's like,
Yep.
hey, you need to do this. But I was expected to take care of my wife's emotions and support her, my kids, and all three of my kids dealt with it differently. They each had their own stage of grief. Everyone deals with grief differently.
Right.
Like there's no right way or wrong way to deal with
Right.
grief, and so each of my three kids had a different response to that, and so I have these four people that I'm trying to take care of as well as myself, and so what you're saying is you think you're experiencing the same thing, but you're experiencing it different because you're experiencing grief different.
Yep.
And then you're also trying to support those people too. So I found for me, a lot of times I would just prefer to be alone when I was dealing with some of the stuff, just because I could get it out and cry, and I felt okay about crying when I'm alone,
Yeah.
And so like one of the things that we did is we purposely, you have to do things on purpose. And so we would purposely, well, I don't even know if it was on purpose, but we would kind of support each other. It's like, it seemed when one of us was down, the other one was up, and when one was up, the other one was down. And so that we could support ourselves. And when I needed to cry, like Julie was there for me. She, supported me and did that. So that's, I think, that is one of the reasons that we definitely made it through it. That we were working on our relationship, and we were purposeful. We knew the statistics.
Yeah.
We knew that you have to.
You were not naive.
Right. It's something that change. I mean, you get changed when you lose a child.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not the same person I was in 2014.
That's yeah, and I can say I think for the better, ultimately.
I hope so.
Yeah. No, gosh. Well, we all hope that we're better than we were 7 years ago. So, it was with each year that has passed. I feel like the memory of all of it is still is strong. Things have not gotten, from my perspective, things have not gotten fuzzy. What was important about that loss and the things surrounding it are remembered well. But you are, as each year passes, are you healed more? Like, is there more healing that occurs?
I think so. I mean, I think that one of the things that I think has helped that with our family is that we've included her in a lot of stuff. We say her name a lot. And that's one thing that I would encourage you to do. If you know somebody who has gone through pregnancy and infant loss, say their baby's name. It's not like they don't know it happened. It's not like you're saying their name is going to hurt them anymore. It's good to know that somebody else remembers your daughter. It's somebody else. It's nice that I know that you remember Macy.
Right.
That you count her life as one of my children. Just like if you were talking about Eli,
Right.
Patty, Micah, Reagan. Like, to me, I know that you're counting that as a life,
Right.
not just something that happened, an event in our family. So if you know somebody, definitely support them by saying their baby's name. They will appreciate that. And so I think that's one of the things that we did is we've said her name lots.
Yeah.
In fact, Hattie, who is our fifth child that comes after Macy, talks about her like she's here, talks about Macy. And so that's one of the things that we've included her. When we've done family pictures, we've taken the picture that we've had in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I think that I would say too is if you can get pictures.
Yep. Because most people, and the people that I've walked with after your guys' situation have felt hesitant to do that. Like
it was one of the best decisions.
Yeah.
And
yep.
And Brian, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking those pictures. I know that was hard for you. And I appreciate you doing that, because for us, that's all we have of her.
Right. But it's massively helpful for the healing process.
Oh, huge. Her picture still hangs on our wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
With our family, with
Yeah.
our kids, and we have a in one of our cupboards we have each kid's baby picture, and hers is right in the line there.
Yeah.
And I think that even though it may seem weird if you've never been involved in pregnancy and infant loss, it's one of the best things that we did, because it allows us to go, I remember her. I remember what she looks like. And yes, those pictures sometimes do cause pain. Like,
Yeah.
I have a handful of pictures that I took on my phone while we were in the hospital, and
Mhm.
a lot of times I look on those in sadness, just because.
Yeah.
But they were so good to go back and see, and remind myself, oh, this wasn't just a dream. This wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, she was a real person.
Yep. I have heard some people lament over time, and this is for various loved ones that have lost or whatever, but like when the memory starts to fade of what they looked like, or things like that, that of itself is a separate loss, is a feeling of that memory is kind of escaping you. And so to be able to capture it, and it helped, like, that was the thing, like, by you being intentional, like by those photos happening, by having someone do that, by you putting them in an album, having them in a central place, having them hanging up on your wall, it's like you don't hide from that's what I have appreciated about you guys. Like, you're not hiding from any of it. And I think to the outside perspective, and some of you might be thinking, like, this is like, if I can just be kind of blunt, like, they have a picture of a dead baby up on their wall. Which I should say, the photos are all, they're just so well done, and Brian did a great job. But like, if you told somebody that, right, like, we have a picture of a dead child up, on our wall, that can sound kind of, but it's just it's not, it's just something very beautiful and sacred about it. And the fact that you guys pressed in so intentionally in that, I think is a big part of the healing. I mean, it really is part of the healing process. It's part of the reason that you and Julie are still married.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the reason that your kids have walked through that loss as well as they have, and can speak about it in, I think, in appropriate terms.
Yeah.
And they as best they can at their age, have walked through it, dealt with it, understood it. And then it's also just helped a lot of other people. I mean, our family included, just like, because here's the thing, in the West in particular, we don't like talking about death in general.
No,
we don't like death. We do everything we can to fight it off. We do everything because either we're either terrified of what happens after death, which is a whole other episode, or we have such a youth culture that this whole, like,
gotta stay young,
and live forever kind of thing. And I'm just like, there is a real art. There's a real art to walking through death and walking through grief, and to understand it as what it is, and to take the learning experiences that are offered by it. But yeah, I just think you guys have just been a real example of what it looks like to thrive post loss. Because I don't there's some people that just never, you've never gotten over it, quote unquote. It's not your goal is not to get over it, but your goal is to, what would you say your goal is? But without me trying to put words in your mouth, what is your goal?
What was our goal in the whole thing?
Yeah, like, or and even now, maybe it's you couldn't have identified it at the time, but like now, it's like when you say our goal as a family living with this loss is to what?
I think our goal as a family is to help others who have gone through it.
Yep.
It's definitely not something easy. And I don't want to say that I cherish the experience, but I cherish the experience that we've had because we have been able to walk with people who have experienced the same thing. And while every loss is different, we know in general terms how they're feeling. I mean, I can't say that I know exactly how you're feeling because I'm not you, but I know what it's like to lose a child. And so I think that our goal is to, first glorify God with it all.
Right.
But I think that the other goal is to walk with people who have experienced that loss.
And you and Julie have both said that you feel like your guys' experience was an exceptional one because you had people that came running in around you.
Yes.
And many times for folks in that same situation, that is not the case.
Right. Well, and I think people, because of the fact people just don't know what to do with death, they're scared of not knowing what to say, saying the wrong thing. And so people just kind of run from it and don't come around. And that feels so cold
to
those experiencing that. So one of the things that I would say, if you have friends going through it again, just be there and be real.
Yep.
Like, be there for the person. And going back to like a previous point, I think one of the things that has helped us through it also is, again, knowing, we have a faith in Jesus Christ. And I think that has extremely helped our family. We know that one day we know where Macy's at.
Right.
We know where she's at.
She's doing fine.
Right. In fact, like, I long for that day.
Right.
Like, heaven, before that, it's like, yes, I'm excited to go be with Jesus, but like, heaven has a whole new meaning for me.
Yeah.
Now.
Interesting. Yeah. And, I've said this elsewhere in some larger public gatherings when talking about your guys' loss and kind of and just the things I've learned from it. But the ministry, I feel like I'm gonna use the wrong words no matter what. The ministry that your guys' loss has brought about, has enabled, has given power to, however you best would say it, is just that's a massive display of God's grace and goodness and all of it. But like, that's the other thing about I think a good sign of healthy grief is like you're given an opportunity to help others, and you are in such a place that you could actually step into that role with a sense of joy.
Yes.
Yeah. In a sense of calling, I think. And so, Andy, that's led Julie to starting the chapter for Northern Indiana of Hope Mommies, which has been a whole other wild ride in of itself.
Yeah. So we can talk about that. So Julie found out about this ministry called Hope Mommies. They're out of Texas, is where they started at, and they.
And just to say, your wife was looking for a support group.
Yeah.
She was looking for something, and there were
like
not a lot of great options, particularly that were faith focused. Right.
Right. And so she found this ministry, Hope Mommies. They were having their annual retreat in Texas in like a week or 2 weeks from when she found it, and we ended up taking a family trip. And she went to the retreat, and I took the kids to
a weird Texas zoo.
Oh man. Okay, that's a whole other
That's
episode
like
too.
Pre-Tiger King, by the way.
Because
now when I see Tiger King,
that's what you think of.
That's what I think of.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you don't want to know the zoo, it was kind of like Tiger King. I mean, it wasn't that zoo, but it was like that. But yeah, so she went to the retreat and then ended up applying for and starting the chapter here in Northern Indiana because there was no I think when she started, there was no chapters outside of Texas.
Correct. I'm
And
almost
so,
certain
and so, yeah, so she was like the first, like, let's take this out of Texas.
pioneer.
Yeah, and so what they do is they do several different things. They do support groups for women locally, like monthly meetups and gatherings, to allow the women to just hang out, do things, talk about their babies, things like that. And they also do what they call hope boxes. And what a hope box is it's just a general, it's a shoe box or something the size of a shoe box, a photo box, that has general pampered items in it, some lotion, some tea, some comfort items. It has some reading things to read about grief. It has a Bible in it. It's just something that women can get when they're experiencing this loss, and to give them a little bit of something to know somebody is caring and thinking about them. And so each the boxes are put together by the local chapter, and they're distributed throughout the area. They're in a lot of our hospitals and midwifery places. And so that way, when people know of a loss, they can get one of these, or you can request one too. So people a lot of times have contacted directly the chapter and said, "Hey, I know of this person who's going through a loss. Can you send them a box?" And so that's all done by donations. Each box costs like $50 to send out or to put together. But it's just excuse me, it's just a way for women experiencing a loss to know somebody else is caring for it. Somebody else has gone through this. So those are the general idea of what Hope Mommies does. It's a great organization. I would say if you're listening and you're a dude, and your wife or somebody that you know is going through a loss, look up hopemommies.org, because it's a great organization for them to get involved with.
Yeah, and the ministry that's been done out of that, the Northern Indiana chapter is in the unique position of, you've got a lot of ground to cover. You're the radius that organization is covering as far as the hospitals and doctors' offices. It's a lot.
It's all Northern Indiana. It's Fort Wayne. It's Southern Michigan.
Yep.
It's
all that. And like right now here at Clinton Frame, we are in the process of selling. We did this whole effort because we wanted as a church. We absolutely want to support what's going on in this, and so right now we're selling all of our cookbooks.
Yes,
all these cookbooks, y'all.
There's some good.
If you've never seen a good Mennonite cookbook, feast your eyes. My goodness.
Yes.
It's delicious. But there's all different kinds of ways that funds can be raised. Fundraisers can be had to help do these Hope Box. They do Hope Box parties where they get a bunch of people together, and youth ministries, young adult ministries, Bible studies, all different groups of people that can be like, hey, we just want to sponsor, boxes and do that. And that's a totally awesome
thing. They would definitely appreciate that because their need is so great in this. And it's, again, one of those things that I didn't realize was so vast until I was part of this, subculture here that exists that no one really wants to be a part of.
Right. The club that no one wants to get invited to.
Right. Yeah. And so like the need is vast. And so, if you want to contact, their contact information will be in the show notes.
Awesome. So here we are, Andy, all this time going on. It'll be 7 years in April. And, there is, we believe that joy comes in the morning. I've been learning a lot about joy recently. It's in youth ministry circles. We're talking a lot about joy these days because we as church leaders are realizing that we don't equip people with joy all the time.
Right.
But that joy is like it's kind of the point. Like, not to be happy, but to be joyful. Right. And so I see a lot of joy coming out of this. I see, the experience that I've had is, emceed a couple of the fundraising events, and the folks that are there, they've been through a lot, but like there's something
Right.
special to walking through that fire and what it can do. Again, what it can do if you press in and pursue some healthy avenues,
Right.
what it can produce in your life.
Yeah.
It can drive you a lot of darkness and a lot of bad places, but it can also, boy oh boy, it can also open up a lot of new things for you. So, yeah, I would just say again, for anybody that are friends, family members, whatever, walking alongside somebody who's gone through a loss. Yeah.
I want to extend the invitation to you. Like, if you're a dude who is going through this now or has gone through it or knows somebody, like, reach out to me. I would love to get together with you. I'd love to do a Zoom call with you and just hang out with you, talk with you. You can shoot me an email, Andy@Dudes and Dads Podcast. And like I said, I would love to talk with you and just provide some support for you, because I've gone through it, and I may not know your exact situation, but I do know what it's like to lose a child.
Andy, as always, man, I appreciate talking about this.
Yeah.
And we will provide all the helpful links, as Andy said, in our show notes. If you have gone through or know someone who's gone through, I mean, there's been times before I've been just come aware of someone who's recently lost a kid, and I just get on the phone with Julie, and here's their name and address and contact information, and we can get them a hope box. There, it might be something simple like that just helps begin the healing journey for someone. So, use the resources available. Don't hesitate to reach out. It's a good thing. So thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm glad to talk about it, because for me, it's healing to talk about Macy. I love talking about her and my experience, because again, I don't want her life to be in vain, and so for me to get a chance to talk about it is amazing. And I love any opportunity I get the chance to do that.
Yeah, so. I love it too, man. I'm grateful for it. So, guys, it's been real. It's been fun.
So you can see the show notes for this at dudesandadspodcast.com. All of our episodes are there. Like and subscribe. If you have your favorite podcatcher, whether it be something on Apple or Android or
whatever it is,
wherever you get your podcast, subscribe so you get this every single time that we put out an episode.
Yeah, and if you know what, if you haven't, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or anything like that, if you have not followed us, liked us, whatever, do it.
Right. And reach out to us. We love hearing from our listeners.
We do.
Yes.
Dudesandadspodcast@gmail.com is a great way to get a hold of us. So, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you're all having a fantastic week. And until next time, grace and peace.